welcome everyone. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Sophia Moermond. I'm an MP here in the Upper House in Perth, at least until the 20th of May. Hopefully they've finished counting sometime soon and I may get another term in. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If there's an emergency, there's stairs down there or down there, and there's a muster point down there, and the toilets are through that door, and you turn right. Apparently the ones over there are from a different venue, so we're not allowed to use them. Anyway, weird little rules, bureaucracies everywhere, there you go. So as you might have noticed, this is a book launch. I haven't felt safe enough to put Kirralie's name out the front there or to advertise this on social media or anywhere else, right? And taking that into account, I really appreciate for you who have turned up here today, because I know this takes courage. It shouldn't, because we are speaking the truth. We're not saying anything controversial, right? And we are here for safeguarding of children and a safeguarding of those who are confused about their gender. And these are very noble things that we are here for, and yet somehow we have to be careful, because if there's just a hint out there that we're talking about this, we'll have trans rights activists here, and that's silly. Anyway, that's okay. So I came, I've known Tess for quite a while, and I have been a TERF probably for about 10 to 12 years or so by now. I got there on my journey because one of my partners had a preference for porn. And when you do a deep dive into that, you come across sissy hypno porn. Yeah, don't look it up. Yeah, just don't. You don't need to know this. No, just trust me on this, right? And that's when you find out how pervasive and damaging gender ideology really, really is. Anyway, we've got quite a few. Well, we've got 3 speakers and myself for you today. The first speaker is Kirralie Smith. Now, I've been following Kirraliee for quite a while already, and like I said, she is very, very brave to be here and to write this book. So we are here celebrating the launch of Devastated, in which different parents in particular have written about the loss of their child to gender ideology. So I'd like to welcome Kirralie to the stage here.
Thank you, Sophia. I really appreciate you hosting this morning. It's unfortunately is a brave thing to do, and I've said to a few of you this morning that there's no place in my brain where I wake up and go, oh, this is just normal. You know, it's normal to have to even do this. It's not normal. It's bizarre. It's crazy. And my little joke for the morning will be, you know, my badge of honour is I have a 2-year AVO for identifying a man in female sport. You can ask me about that later. I'm not going to talk about that today because it's not in the book. But so until you have an AVO for doing this stuff, you're not trying hard enough, okay? It is insane. And I'm about, in 2 weeks' time, I go for my 9th court appearance. This one's for vilification for, again, identifying a male in female sport. So they're relentless in their pursuit, but I have complete confidence knowing that I'm right. There's absolutely nothing that anyone can do or say to me that will change my mind. And if I have to pay this price, I'll pay the price, because I won't lie and I won't be a part of the deception. So I will stick to my notes because we don't have a lot of time this morning, but please come and talk to me afterwards. So this is a very serious topic, and naturally I am quite lighthearted and like to joke, but it's very impossible almost, and it's not respectful to do that in this situation. But I do want to say that gender identity ideology is destroying families in Australia. It sounds like a massive statement or a dramatic statement to make, but it's true. It's actually what is happening. Collating and editing this book, so there's 9 stories in this book. Tess is one of them, and you'll hear from her if you haven't already or don't know her story in a moment. I know for me it was one of the most harrowing experiences of my life. The 9 to 12 months that it took us to put together was devastating. To just be on the outside looking in, to read these stories, to meet these people, to now call them my friends, has been really heartbreaking. And I can't imagine what it is to live it. You know, we get to read this book, most of us. I know there's some here who are living this as well, but I get to read and write this book and put it down. But the unfortunate reality for an increasing number of families in Australia is they have to live it every single day and all the consequences that come with that. And the worst part about it all is it is a completely avoidable tragedy. This did not have to happen, and it does not have to continue. These families have suffered relentlessly as a result of many politicians legislating lies. They literally have put lies into legislation and have made it illegal for us to speak the truth, for medical practitioners to practice the truth, and for lobbyists and others, for parents to stand on their own rights, to look after their own children. But I hope with stories like the ones in this book, with Tess and others meeting politicians face to face, with incredible politicians like Sophia here and Marika, and sorry if I've missed anyone else, we can ensure that this conversation continues to happen. Julia Gillard, you may or may not know, our first female Prime Minister, removed sex-based protections from the Sex Discrimination Act in 2013. I don't know what kind of discrimination act it is. It's maybe a gender identity discrimination act now, but it's not a sex discrimination act because there are no protections for sex within that act. As a result, we are confronted with the nonsensical and utterly ridiculous notion that anyone who identifies as a woman is a woman, or anyone who identifies as a man is a man, and there's far more protections for those self-identifying people than there are for you and I. Under law, Exhibit A, right here. But we know a woman is an adult human female. A female is a scientific term. It's not just, this is language that has been since day dot. We have XX chromosomes, a body with a reproductive system that's geared around the creation of gametes, large gametes for women called eggs. Same for male. I won't repeat all of it in terms of male and female. I'll just talk about the female mostly. Sex is an immutable fact. It's not something that's assigned at birth. It's not something that can be changed, regardless of what federal court judges in this country say. They're not telling you the truth. Costumes, drugs and surgeries do not negate the sex of a person's body. Sex is written on every single cell that contains a nucleus within the human body. And the Sex Discrimination Act should provide protections for that. And if it did, it would actually resolve nearly all of these issues. Gender identity is based on feelings. It's a personal expression. It's real. People have that. I'm not saying it's not real, but it's not measurable. It's not something that we can standardise. It's not something that we can make legislation about. It's like, my preference for the colour blue. I can't make that a law. That's ridiculous. And so is making laws around gender identity. We have laws to protect people from violence and from unfair dismissal at work and all of those sort of things. And those laws ought to be enough. We have spent decades trying to dismantle sex stereotypes. Centuries trying to dismantle sex stereotypes. And now here we are in 2025 legislating sex stereotypes. If a boy likes pink, he must be a girl, and you've got to put him on really harmful, irreversible, catastrophic drugs to affirm that fact. How insane have we become? Every federal and state government since 2013 have incrementally changed the laws to protect and promote this gender identity. And it's getting harder and harder to fight. We are getting silenced, censored, penalised all the time. But I am also greatly encouraged because whether you like him or don't, Donald Trump has opened the door for us to actually have this conversation a lot more by writing executive orders stating the incredibly brain-frying fact that sex is binary. There's male and there's female. States have changed identity laws in Australia to allow people to rewrite historical facts on their birth certificates and other official documents. They've allowed males to gain access to female spaces without regard for how that impacts female sex-based rights. And we've had to have differences in laws and rights for women because we are more vulnerable, whether we like it or not. And we don't need every space in public to be separate, but there are some really key crucial ones, sports services and spaces that must remain for female sex-based rights only. Males who are addicted to pornography, you mentioned that, Sophia, are being granted the ability to live out their fantasies in public, but also they have the law on their side that we have to affirm those fantasies and partake in that fantasy. Vulnerable young girls they're already struggling with their body images. They're being offered false solutions and deceptive ways to avoid the horror of being sexualised or marginalised. There's so many better ways we can do this than them cutting off their breasts, halting their puberty, suffering from male pattern baldness, atrophied wombs, early menopause, blood and bone problems, brain development issues. The list goes on. Every single child deserves the right to go through puberty. That's the only way you can become a mature adult. There is no other way to do that. And if we're pausing it, if we're interrupting it, and if we're giving them these drugs that make them lifelong medical consumers, that is not just being kind. That is actually the utmost cruelty. And our society has partaken in this, led by politicians, led by a medical class that haven't spoken out or that are activists in this space. And now we're confronted with these 9 families are representative of thousands of families that are just being devastated around the country. Politicians in particular need to be confronted with how devastating this is. And this is where we get to play a part. Each one of us has access to our local MPs. Each one of us has a voice and we must use it. They need to meet the heartbroken mothers like Tess and read the stories that are in this book. They need to understand that the laws they've made, not just around gender identity, but in the education system, in the medical system, in the social services system, all of those systems work together to devastate these families. But despite the devastation these families have endured, there is hope. For all of you in the room that know Tess and Bill, they're the most joyful people in the face of the most horrible circumstances, and I really admire you and respect you and want to publicly say how inspiring you are, Tess, and so are so many of the parents that I meet as I travel around the country. Because safeguarding children must be addressed and prioritised, and we should never be ashamed or afraid of safeguarding children or women's sex-based rights. The hypersexualised culture we live in puts so many young people at risk. It is mind-blowing. There's unsupervised access to the internet, and it is a recipe for disaster, as many of the families testify. Sexualised content in public or in schools in particular must never be excused when it comes to our children. Lying to children, to anyone, and claiming that they can change their sex is an abomination, and we've got to call it that. It is a lie. You've heard it, I've heard it. Why can't you just be kind? Why can't you just be kind? Well, I'm being kind. Telling the truth is being kind. Deceiving someone and lying to someone is cruel. Let's take back their language and speak the truth for what it is. We must teach our children to be resilient and to overcome trials and difficult circumstances. And that's no blame on the families in this book or anyone else. That was their intention. That is exactly what these families have done. They've done exactly what all of us would do in seeking help for our children. It is the systems that have manipulated and interrupted our relationship with our own children. And again, I don't even have words. I love words, but I can't even find the words to describe how horrifying this is. We must stop and confront these so-called affirmation practices. You know, we don't affirm anorexics by giving them gastric band surgery. We don't affirm addicts by giving them alcohol or access to gambling. We don't affirm depressed people with self-harm. we do not need to affirm someone who doesn't feel comfortable with their natal sex. We need to encourage them, equip them, and help them become resilient and overcome, because we know that up to 90% of children left without any medical intervention, once they've gone through the harrowing time of puberty, which we've all faced, they will accept their natal sex and they will be better and stronger for it. No child is born in the wrong body. Every child is unique and a beautiful creation, designed to add colour to our world the only way that they can. We need to not worry about the stereotypes. We need to affirm the reality. How am I going for time? It's gone. A few more minutes? Two more? I was just going to mention, in terms of resistance, we all know, and my body's not the example, but if you go to the gym, you need resistance to get strong. Our children need resistance to get strong. They need to be told no. It's okay. We don't have to apologise for saying no to children, to young people in our country. We are the adults. We need to stand up and do some adulting in this situation. They don't need superficial, false or misleading treatments to help them avoid the difficult situations. We know that all teenagers throughout history have gone through periods of rebellion, but it's really different to dress in black and get piercings, to have these medications and be separated from your families who care about you and love you for life. It should never be an option to medicate, and especially experimentally medicate, young people to appease a handful of adults who want to be affirmed. We must be focused on loving and reassuring our young people based on the truth. Unspeakable tragedies do happen. Trauma is inflicted on young people. Some are born with autism or on the spectrum. These are real difficult circumstances that our children face. Some have been abused. Some have gone through unspeakable difficulties, but it's no excuse to then sentence them to a life of being a lifelong medical consumer to achieve a goal they can never achieve, because nobody can change their sex. There is a plumb line, a true north, and unarguable evidence that we can all rely on, and that is the fact that sex is binary. There is male and female, that's all, folks. And yes, I know there's differences of disorders, but there's still male with female sex differences, or vice versa. There's still only male and female. There's no third gamete, and we need to get back to those facts. We need to admit the truth, right the wrongs, and face reality, and it will cost us to do so. It's going to take many years to mop up the mess. If all the laws were changed today, it's not going to change Tess's family, unfortunately. Tess and anyone going through these things, and I know there's more of you here today, need support, need care, need compassion, need hope. All of those things, as we all do. But we need to get really serious, to stand by them and to use our voice. Gender identity is like an uncontainable mist, like the fog in the morning that you can't grab hold. You can see it. It even looks so solid that you can't see the trees beyond it or the mountains. But what dissipates the mist? Sunlight. And the sunlight we have access to in this situation is the truth. Just keep speaking the truth everywhere you can. My hope is that this book will be an effective tool for change, that it will encourage families who are going through this, that we will be able to take it to our local MPs, doctors, schools, whatever you can think of. It's a really effective, because it's their stories and you cannot argue with a person's story. I can never say thank you enough to the brave families who contributed to this very, very important book. And I just want to remind everyone they're real people going through really hard things, living with great pain and regret, but have still been able to thrive in many other ways, have been able to support and encourage other people, which is just amazing. And some are still hoping for that brighter day to come. Their stories are multiplied, as I've said, thousands of times around Australia alone. It's in the UK, it's in Canada, it's in the US, everywhere you go in the Western world. But we can all be a part of the change. We can influence our culture for good. Anytime someone tries to silence you, I want you to remember these stories. Remember that these people are real. Remember that the impacts are actually devastating. And sure, we might get called names. You might get an AVO put on you. might get thrown in jail at some point, who knows, with all the hate speech laws that are coming in. But it's worth it. It's worth it to save the lives of these incredibly vulnerable young people. Truth, reality, and evidence-based science will prevail. I have no doubt about that. We will win in the end. It's just a matter of time and a matter of a commitment from each one of us to stay the course. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirraliee. That was amazing. Just another round of applause for that. What I hear listening to you is your compassion, right? One of the things that we as transphobes get accused of is that we don't have any compassion. We absolutely do. We want what is right for those children. Yeah, we want those children to grow up, to not be medicalised, to not suffer early menopause, osteoporosis, to be able to have fulfilling, intimate relationships when they are older. And to take that away from a child who can't possibly understand yet what they're going to miss out on is incredibly cruel. And I find it bizarre that so many people don't get that cruelty right there, basically to validate the fetishes of porn-sick men. And those porn-sick men want us to participate in their fetish too. No, they don't have my consent. Right? I don't care if you're a man who wants to wear a dress. They're comfortable. I don't care. You're a bloke that wants to wear makeup. I don't care. I tend not to. It doesn't make me a male. Yeah? And if you're a man and you want to do that, go for it. You be you. Absolutely. But you don't deserve access to our spaces. You don't deserve access to Olympic gold. You don't deserve access to female sports or female prisons with that. So one of the things that Kirraliee just did touch on was the fact that she's currently being pursued by some men who own a female footy team, the Flying Bats, because they are incredibly threatened. They're looking for a VRO against Kirraliee. How scary is Kirraliee? Yeah? That woman is not scary at all. So, and that is just one of those things that, you know, get thrown in our way where people are trying to cancel us for speaking the truth, basically. So, next speaker, Tess Hackett. Yay!
Hi, everyone. So Kirraliee is a very hard act to follow, so yep, you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to be reading too because I'm very, very nervous, so yeah. So thank you everyone for being here today. I'd like to begin with expressing my gratitude to Kirraliee and Binary for making this book a reality, and to Sophia for hosting us. It's an honour to stand here with you today. When Kirraliee first approached me to contribute a chapter to the book, I felt both excitement and trepidation. The excitement came from knowing that this project could amplify the voices like mine. But then came the fear. What would happen when my deeply personal story became public? Would there be repercussions for me and my family, and would I be targeted by activists? Could I lose my job? These fears are shared by all parents, which is why this book is so important. The stories in it shine a light on the lived experiences of families navigating one of the most difficult challenges imaginable. Sadly, for every story included here, there are countless more that are untold, hidden by fear of backlash, and that's what drove me to contribute to the book, to speak on behalf of the parents here that can't. When my family was first confronted with this issue in early 2016, it felt like stepping into another reality. Most people I tried to talk to, friends, family, and even medical professionals, literally thought I was crazy. Many didn't understand what I was describing, confusing it with homosexuality, and labelled me as homophobic, transphobic, abusive, bigoted. The list goes on. It was an isolating and terrifying experience. It felt as if the entire world had turned against us. The institutions we once trusted, schools, medical professionals, and even the police in our case, suddenly seemed like threats. Instead of allies, we faced hostility, abuse, and emotional blackmail. As parents facing the challenge, we find ourselves in a desperate fight to safeguard the health and the future of our children while being ostracised by society around us. To me, it felt like being thrust into a nightmare, like falling down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. The world around me was chaotic and nonsensical, and there literally seemed to be no way out. And some days I literally still feel like that. I often say to people, I identify as Alice in Wonderland. And I always hated that book, so it's kind of ironic. After searching for help from anyone and everyone, because back in 2016 there was nothing to search for, there wasn't a name for this. This was before ROGD, so rapid onset gender dysphoria, was even a thing. So, what do you search for? My daughter thinks she's a male. There was very little even online to be able to see. So, eventually I bumped into a US-based group, and with their help, I started the first parent support group in Australia for parents in my situation. We now have chapters literally all over the world. So Kirralie's listed some countries. We've also got Italy, we have Ireland, we have Israel, we have Germany, we have Switzerland, we have Sweden, apart from the ones, UK and US, obviously, and Canada that you'd all be familiar with. Considering we're not promoted or advertised, our numbers have grown significantly over the years. I can average anywhere up to 4 to 5 new parents a week and anywhere up to 20 calls a week from parents already in the group who just need to be able to unload in a safe space with someone who intimately understands the issues that we face. Some calls are extremely urgent requests for help. Parents finding out that other so-called well-meaning parents are trying to take their child from their family to take them away and transition them. That literally has happened multiple times. Some calls are for parents who feel like they just can't go on after finding that their child has started taking cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers, or has been accepted to have their breasts amputated, or hysterectomies, or have their genitals removed. Some people call trying to find the names of safe medical professionals who won't go behind a parent's back to transition their children or report them for conversion therapy. There's often talk about the suicide risks to transgender kids, but please believe me when I tell you that a lot of parents are literally at that point themselves. They struggle on a daily basis and are too scared to go and find help. Trans activists often paint us parents as harmful, hateful and abusive, but the truth is actually the opposite. Every parent I've spoken to, and that's literally hundreds, probably getting up to the thousands now around the world, wants to save their child and maintain the bond. We love our children. The idea that parents should be excluded from decisions about their child's future is heartbreaking, and it's wrong. Yet that's exactly what's being reinforced in schools and other institutions where children are told to keep secrets from their families and build what they're now calling circles of trust that exclude parents. Our national curriculum is indoctrinating our children to be global citizens, not Australian citizens, and certainly not family members. The politicised curriculum encourages children from the youngest ages to be activists, to fight against heteronormativity and family connections. Our children are being turned against us, and parental authority is being completely destroyed. I think it's a really, really cruel goal to set a child, to tell them that with off-label, harmful medication and surgery that they can actually become the opposite sex. Many of the children involved are on the autism spectrum. They've had trauma, like our daughter. They've got mental health issues or personality disorders, or a combination of all of those. The young people are seeking answers as to why they don't feel like they fit in, or why puberty is so awkward and uncomfortable, and why instead of learning to be comfortable in their bodies and accepting themselves as the unique, special individuals they really are, they're being sold this harmful ideology instead. The transgender movement seems to be morphing in more recent times. In more cases, the stories don't even fit with the concept of gender dysphoria at all. Instead, these youth appear to be making a political statement. Many of the youth wanting to transition now don't even want to be the actual opposite sex. They just want to be trans and go with the socialist Marxist ideology that surrounds this movement. Some of the more recent cases have youth not only declaring a transgender status, but also a disability status alongside it, and start using walking canes, and I've even had some that are using wheelchairs now, along with their transgender status. We don't know why. Schools allow social transition, often behind a parent's back. Some parents find out graduation night. Imagine going to your child's graduation and there's the photo that you've provided, the baby photo that you've provided of your child, and guess what? The name's wrong. And so you sit there in the audience thinking, oh God, they've made like a mistake sort of thing, only to find that actually no, your child has been this whole other person in school the whole time, and this is your first introduction to it. Literally, that's what's happening in multiple cases. So social transition is where a child can change the name and pronouns being used at school, wear the opposite sex uniform, which may seem harmless initially, but recent studies of the longer term consequences of these actions show that social transition is not a neutral act, and in fact it pipelines them into medical and surgical transition. Think about it. A child comes out initially as transgender. They get love bombed, they become popular, they stop getting bullied, they become VIPs. They're celebrated. But then what happens when that child later sort of thinks about it more and thinks, well, actually, I don't think I really am transgender, whatever that means. Desisting, which is the term used when no medical or surgical interventions have happened, or detransitioning causes issues that from being ostracised by their LGBT community. They get abused, they are bullied, they're cancelled. And sometimes that goes all the way to even having things like funding cancelled. So detransitioners around the world, and even some here in Australia, have actually talked about how they're literally facing homelessness. And if they went back to self-declaring their transgender status, they would be given housing immediately. Our institutions have made transgender a priority. Detransitioners around the world are speaking out more and more about the health effects of gender-affirming care, the medicalisation and the surgery. The common theme among them is to wonder why their parents and medical professionals didn't try and stop them. Young people are just not equipped to make these sort of medical decisions which will impact them for the rest of their lives. Kirralie's talked about some of the different effects, but anywhere for one of the recent studies, which really horrifies me because I know some of the parents whose girls are actually experiencing this now, is something like 89% of girls who've started testosterone in their sort of, when they're 18 sort of thing, by the time they're 30, 89% will experience incontinence, fecal and urinary incontinence. So they're literally walking around. Can you imagine walking around at 30 or close to 30, having to wear adult diapers? And 89% are experiencing some degree of this. Like the harms are huge. We are doing our youth a major disservice by going along with gender ideology. Some parents now are facing a whole new challenge with the furry community. What is a furry? Well, it's not officially transgender, but it is part of the associated umbrella. And it's made up of people who believe they're part animals, often cats, dogs, raccoons, coyotes, all sorts of exotic animals. And they wear animal-type costumes such as ears and tails and communicate by hissing, spitting and growling. In Queensland in February, a teacher was actually stood down from her teaching position, for wearing animal paraphernalia at school and for hissing at students. In one story I've been told by a parent, somebody I know personally and very well, her son was suspended for misgendering and for complaining because a dog that was in the class had a squeaky toy in this person's mouth and was using it to squeak constantly in the classroom, and he received a 3-day suspension for complaining about the noise and the disruption. For many parents, the grief and the stress of this experience is overwhelming. Unlike the grief of losing a child to death, which is met with compassion, we're often blamed. We're emotionally blackmailed by our trans child or children, because yes, now in some families they have multiple kids who identify as trans. And by the community and institutions at large, by telling us that if we don't immediately affirm, we were responsible for our child suiciding. Better a live son than a dead daughter, or vice versa, is something that we hear all the time. It's constant, and every single person I've ever spoken to in this has been told the same thing. Parents also deal with the fallout of the effects on the other children in their family. The siblings suffer. The siblings are an untold voice. Some siblings express deep grief for the loss of their sibling, while others are groomed by the trans-identifying child to also transition. We are left to navigate these horrible, hostile situations and environments while trying desperately to protect our children from the harm that they want to inflict on themselves. The stress of not knowing if the next medical professional or teacher or therapist we are required to meet will be an ally to us, even secretly, or be completely indoctrinated by the ideology is exhausting. It feels like it's literally us against the world, and it's the fight of our lives. We carry the weight of our loss while trying to function in a world that feels indifferent or outright hostile. Parents whose children become alcoholics or drug addicts can openly discuss their pain and their grief without fear of reprisal. We can't. I'd like to think there's always some sort of hope, and there are steps and things that need changing so that we can try and fix this. We desperately, desperately need an unbiased, independent inquiry into the whole gender industry in Australia. Last year, we got very excited when the WPATH, which is the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, whistleblowers, shared the most incredible information about poor practices, known harms that were ignored and kept underground, and that members being involved in very questionable kink communities. There was no reaction here in Australia. The CAS review came out in the UK, which also looked at a number of Australian hospitals and found a really poor standard of evidence and poor practice and harm. And again, we thought that would be really a great thing for Australia. Most professionals kind of went, well, it doesn't apply to Australia because we've got a multidisciplinary team. Anyway, the newly elected Liberal government announced at the end of January an inquiry into the gender clinics there after it was discovered that children as young as 12 were being prescribed puberty blockers without parental permission. They also put a ban on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones while the investigation was happening. Unfortunately, AusPath, who is the Australian authority who sets the standards for gender-affirming care in Australia, they're actually currently fundraising to provide medicines for the people in Queensland who aren't able to access them. And some doctors previously of Queensland have started internet businesses so that they can provide the medicines that they can't get in Queensland to these children. A couple of days after the Queensland announcement, the Labor Minister for Health, Mark Butler, announced a federal inquiry. We initially were so excited. We thought it was going to be, all our dreams basically had come true. We celebrated the announcement, but on further investigation, there's many of us believe that the federal inquiry has actually been called to try and stop the states from holding their own inquiries, so that they don't block any further bans on medicalisation. Organisations such as AusPath and Transgender Australia are actually celebrating the call for an inquiry because they've been actually lobbying the Labor government to put more gender-affirming services on because the wait lists for children are so long. It's about a 2-year wait on average for a child to access the gender clinics. Even more concerning is the petition and push by the Australian Plastic Surgeons Association to have all gender-affirming surgeries in Australia paid for by Medicare, all of them. These surgeries include breast removals or breast implants, surgeries to create neovaginas or the removal of testicles, because castration kink is also a thing now, for men who want to become women, and phalloplasty, so putting on a penis-type appendage for girls. Also facial feminisation surgery and shavings of Adam's apples. I mean, apart from the obvious taxpayer costs for these surgeries is the fact that most of them have very, very poor success rates. And despite what's said by mainstream media, there is no gatekeeping. There's no gatekeeping for these surgeries or medicines because Australia's standards of care state that a person has to be affirmed immediately. We need a thorough review done here on a national and state level. In WA, now former Liberal leader Libby Mettam had announced that if Liberals had won this state election, she would call for a ban on puberty blockers and call for an estate inquiry. Unfortunately, as you know, Liberals lost. This request has also been brought up frequently in federal parliament by Senator Pauline Hanson, but shamefully that hasn't been passed at all. And we're also fortunate here in WA that we do have some people like Sophia and some new candidates that have just been sworn in, so I don't think they're called candidates now, but some new politicians in Liberal and One Nation who are also very up to date with what's happening with gender affirming care in Australia. So Yeah, it's a really good thing. But unfortunately, with Labor back in charge in Western Australia, there is no end in sight for our kids. For parents, one of the most important issues to reform is the conversion therapy laws. Conversion therapy was once understood as a practice of trying to make homosexual people straight. The new definition piggybacks on that empathy while the meaning has changed completely. Conversion therapy refers to any talk or practice that tries to slow or stop a person transitioning. Given that a large percentage of children who might end up homosexual are currently being transitioned, one could argue that the actual laws that they are doing, the gender-affirming laws, should be considered conversion therapy practice themselves. These laws, as they currently stand, make it nearly impossible for parents or medical professionals to help children to understand that sex cannot be changed. They also prevent detransitioners from accessing the medical care they need, as medical practitioners fear being charged with conversion therapy, which is considered a criminal offence in places like Victoria, where people face a $200,000 fine and 10 years jail. Yep. Doctors also face vexatious complaints through their governing bodies, causing doctors to not want to deal with detransitioners at all. We need to advocate for the removal of transgenderism from these laws, which stop us from getting real help from our children. Last year, the WA Labor government stated that it would introduce conversion therapy laws into Australia if they won the election. So that's looming on the horizon now for all of us, which is concerning. As Kirralie's mentioned, 2013, sex was removed as a defining characteristic from the Sex Discrimination Act by Labor's Julia Gillard. Restoring it would reassert the importance of biological reality and provide some protection against the vilification that many of us, like Kirraliee, for example, face. Sex is biological reality. It is a measurable, definable characteristic, not an idea or a feeling, and we need to protect that fact. We need to educate everyone by speaking about this more. It's an uncomfortable, dark and complex issue, but the truth needs to be heard. The one-sided narrative promoted in mainstream media does not reflect the reality that many families face, nor does it reflect the harms of the medicalisation and surgery for the future well-being of our children. This wave of kids that are getting transitioned now, they're going to have lifelong consequences. So think of it, the increased cancers, the osteoporosis, the incontinence, the problems with brain function and all that. All of those things have lifelong consequences. And as taxpayers, because unfortunately most of the people that transition don't end up having great, well-meaning jobs and being healthy members of the community, they're going to be relying on Medicare and taxpayers to foot that bill. Back in 2016 when this started, honestly, I never believed we'd be here talking about this. It was just so unrealistic. It just was amazing. And obviously, President Trump's executive orders have also increased the publicity on this issue, which is amazing. Please also support grassroots movements. Most advocacy done in this space is done by small unfunded groups who are working tirelessly to raise awareness and push for change. If you can't donate your time, consider donating funds. Even really small amounts can make a big difference. Even small things like sharing social media posts containing true information help. The stakes are high. Every child matters, and every parent deserves the right to protect and guide their child without fear. Thank you for being here today. Together, we can push for a future where the voices of families are heard and they're respected and protected, and our children are safe from the harmful medical practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. And thank you for sharing your story in Book Devastated, and to dedicating your life now to make sure that these sorts of things don't happen again. And I'm sure we're all here with you, wishing you that your daughter will come back to you someday. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So I came out as a TERF in Parliament House by hosting Kelly J. Keane at a Let Women Speak event. Yeah. On the way to that event, Sally Talbot came out to try and stop me. And she basically told me that, Sophia, you're a smart woman, you seem intelligent, you've been brainwashed. Yeah. And then we were talking, it was an animated discussion. And I said, there are women being raped, female prisoners being raped by violent male sex offenders in prison. Do you know what her response was? Women have been raped forever under patriarchy. That was it. All right. How atrocious is that? Okay, anyway, as a result of that, I was cancelled from the party that I was with, and I was bullied for about the last 2 years in Parliament, and I had people make speeches against me. So some of the fellow MPs on the Labour side, you don't get a lot of speaking opportunities while you're in there, chose to waste their 10 minutes bagging me, right? How embarrassing for them. Yeah? How awful is that? Sorry? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Well, thank you. I won't keep you too long, by the way. So, in regards to the LGBT, so one of the things that we get accused of a lot is homophobia, okay? And most of us aren't, I'm going to assume here, I'm certainly not. So the LGB is based on the understanding that biological sex forms the basis for sexual attraction. It's not a bias, it's not a phobia, that's just how things work. All right. The T has been added to that, is based on the belief that sexual attraction is based on hairstyle, clothing, or presentation, and has nothing to do with biological sex. That makes the T inherently homophobic. Now, a lot of people don't realise that bit, okay, but this is really important that you understand that and take that message out there. And I'm sure many of you already do. But it's important to articulate that because we get accused of being homophobic and transphobic at the same time, where in essence, by speaking out against gender ideology, we are supporting lesbian and gay men in their choice of partner. We understand that biological sex is the basis for that. Anyway, I'm going to share something about myself that you don't know. I am really good with power tools. Yeah? Just so you know. I know, right? My dad passed about 5 or 6 years ago, and he left me all his power tools, and I'm quite proud of that. I am still female. Yeah? Just so you know. Okay? Anyway, so going forward, what I think needs to happen is that we need to speak to as many people as we can. Use this book, Irreversible Damage by Abigail Shrier, is also an amazing book as well that talks about social contagion and the effect on girls in particular. We need to get our schools back online by educating children on biology and what that means. Biological sex is immutable. We aren't clownfish, we aren't seahorses, we aren't mermaids. All right, we're human beings, we're mammals, we can't change sex. Puberty is normal, right? None of us enjoyed puberty, I'm sure, yeah? And we all gave our parents a hard time then. That's normal, that's what you're supposed to be doing. You feel awful, you don't understand what's happening to your body, your hormones are all over the place. This is normal, okay? And we need to make sure that kids understand that this is just what happens. It'll last for a couple of years and then you get out the other side and everything's fine again. You know, we can all move on. I think the education needs to be addressed there. We need to be on school boards, sports committees, any sort of like a semi-official boards that we can access to try and talk to people about the harms of gender ideology and to safeguard those girls who are doing sport or girls in schools, get rid of unisex toilets, for instance, really, and the more we have of those people on those boards, the more pushback we'll be able to provide with that. And then, last of all, okay, we are on the right side of history, yeah? Exactly. So keep that in mind. It might not always feel like that. Not everybody will agree with us on that, but we absolutely are. So thank you very much for coming here today. We've got the room for another, I don't know, half an hour or so if everyone wants to grab some more food. Hopefully Kirraliee will sign some books. That would be really, really good. Yeah, oh, and Tess. Yeah, cool. Right, both of you. That would be awesome. Yeah, and take the message out there. Thank you for coming.